Pies, like the holidays, conjure up classic memories for me.
For the Holiday Baking Championship, we asked the bakers to create a decorated pie based on a personal holiday memory.
So I wanted to bake a cool decorative portrait on top of a traditional custard pie. My cinnamon chess pie is a classic custard pie that bakes almost all the way in the oven. Then I stop the baking, then top the pie with a colored cookie dough. Put it all back in the oven and everything finishes together. All right, so let's start with the crust. What I have here is one recipe of my pie dough that's been blind baked. Baked it for about 8 minutes at 400 degrees. Okay, so next we're gonna put an egg wash on this pie crust. Add a little bit of sugar. Go for it. Sarah's really good at pies. So Sarah, you're in charge.
All right, let's seal this.
Okay, now let's make the custard. The cornmeal in a chess pie cut down the sweetness. So, you know, custard pies are really cool and they're always delicious. But chess pies are just a little bit earthier and just have a lot more dimension. So what we have is eggs, cornmeal, flour, cinnamon, buttermilk, sugar, and cooled brown butter. You want to make the brown butter, but then you want to cool it because you don't want to cook the eggs. Go for it.
All right.
And we're going to start adding wet, dry, wet, dry. Cornmeal, flour, cinnamon.
Cinnamon, pinch of salt.
Pinch of salt, always. When you're making a chess pie, don't just get regular cornmeal. You have to get finely ground cornmeal. You get regular cornmeal, it's way too coarse, and you don't want that.
All right.
That looks good.
Pretty smooth. Slowly add that butter for me,
Want some
Dad.
butter?
I do.
This is the brown butter. I want to add it slow so it doesn't solidify. Constantly whisking. And when you're pouring brown butter out, you want to stop with about a teaspoon left in there. Because when you make brown butter, all the milk solids get really, really dark and a little bit too bitter. That very last teaspoon, that's where all the burnt stuff is. You just leave that in the pot so it doesn't end up in your pie. Okay, you're probably looking at this filling and being like, wow, that is really, really liquidy. Don't worry about it. There's a lot of eggs in there, and there's also some flour to help bind it up. When this thing bakes, it's gonna be really, really soft, and really, really delicious. So now we're gonna bake this pie at 350 degrees for 35 minutes. After 10 minutes, though, we're gonna cover the edge of the foil to make sure they don't burn. Okay, so while that's baking, let's make some cookies. Okay, so what I have here is a sugar cookie dough, and I've made a bunch of different colors. So this cookie dough is actually a sablé dough. It's a lot more like a shortbread than it is like a traditional sugar cookie. You can find the recipe at foodnetwork.com. So now what I made some stencils. I got a little tree with a little trunk. I have some presents too. It's gonna be really cute. So first thing you wanna do, roll out sheets of the cookie dough and then put it in the freezer so it gets really hard. Sarah's gonna roll out this dough in between two pieces of parchment. That way she doesn't have to use flour and it's gonna keep the colors really bright. You wanna make sure these cookies are nice and thin because these are gonna bake on top of the pie with the pie. If they're too thick, they're not gonna bake all the way. You wanna make sure they get nice and crispy. Oh, look at that.
Look at that.
You're so clever. Okay, let's get this in the freezer.
Yes.
Okay, so it's been a few minutes and I think the dough's ready. Nice and cold. Okay, first what you do is you take your stencil, just lay it down on the cookie. Stencils are great in the kitchen. They really help you be creative and they really save you a lot of time. That looks like a Christmas tree. All right, so now let's cut out the rest of these. Now I think our pie is ready. We still got to bake it for another 10 minutes after we put these cookies on. The pie's looking really good. It's nice and dark, color is flavor. There's a lot of cinnamon in here, there's a lot of brown butter in here, and that's what's giving it that really nice dark golden brown. Now let's add our cookies. That's ready to go back in the oven for about 10 more minutes. Okay, so this pie's been cooling for a couple hours. Now I'm ready to decorate. Before I do anything on the pie, I'm gonna create a couple little bows for my presents. So I made some white royal icing, just egg whites and powdered sugar. So what I'm doing is I'm just piping a couple little loops on the lip of this bowl. And then when they dry, I'm gonna pull them off and use them as a little 3D bow on top of the presents. And we're just gonna let those air dry. Okay, Mr. Pie. Let's see what you got. This is a bag of black royal icing. You just cut a little hole here. With this, I'm just gonna outline all the presents and you'll see how they're 3D. When you're piping something that's really, really small, you want to use a really small piping bag because you have so much more control. So what I'm using for ornaments are little tiny pearl dragées. It's basically just a fancy sprinkle. How about that for a decorative pie? It's homey, but it's still impressive. Everyone that's gonna see this is gonna freak out. And it's delicious. For my cinnamon chess pie recipe and more, go to foodnetwork.com/DuffSweetSpot.